You're listening to the RAD Podcast, an exploration of wealth, finance, business, and entrepreneurship, hosted by Dutch Mendenhall, founder of RAD Diversified.
How you guys doing?
What's happening, John?
Oh, sorry guys. If my wife actually would maybe go get the kids and interrupt her Pilates course, it might be a little bit easier for me to do some business. So
You got to send her a bill.
oh, unbelievable. You know the way it works, right?
Well, the great part, with my wife is I'm kind of been lucky and blessed that she's was one of the founders of the company. And so she kind of gets it for sure on
Excellent.
that journey. But, she stepped away maybe 5 or 6 years ago when we had our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last year and a half, she came back and started doing media buying for us and stuff, because it was something we really wanted to do in the journey. And she also brought in our 2 biggest affiliates. I think she helped us raise about an additional between 10 and 11 million dollars last year, which was pretty cool.
Holy, well, good for you guys. That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, she's great. We're doing great. On the capital raising side, we're getting better. Like we're 2 to 3 million a month. With our raising, but I think we're kind of starting to accelerate month over month and different kinds of things. But you got a lot of background and experience. I mean, we just get started. There doesn't have to be some formal
Absolutely. Can you hear
introduction.
me okay?
People are going to see the bios and they're going to see the catchphrases and all that cool stuff. But you've had some experience raising money, raising capital. Just explore wealth. I mean, talk to me about things that have worked for you, things that haven't.
Absolutely. I'm my background is essentially I've been in the stock markets since I was actually around 15 years old. I actually started shredding paper in a mailroom of a brokerage firm up in Canada, and I knew I wanted to be in the business since that date. I was an avid golfer. I played a lot of golf, so I started golfing with a lot of the brokers or bankers, whatever it might have been, and I really just saw how they conducted themselves on a daily basis. And I went to university, actually played college golf, and I passed on with that. I thought I was going to be a professional golfer, but I wasn't good enough. And then I kind of went back into the business as an assistant while I was finishing off my degree. And then when I graduated, I became a broker right away. And then that was going back when I was 21 at the time, I think, and learned the business and learned how to manage people's money, but I was more interested in taking companies public, and that's what I do now. And I got really lucky in 2008 of all time. I got lucky on a transaction, and that allowed me to go on my own. And since that time, I've focused on taking really strategic type companies public. Right now, a lot of metals and mining, because that's what I like. But really, it's just years of trials and tribulation, just learning from my mistakes, moving it forward. And now we've probably raised in excess of, probably 500 to $1 billion over the last, 10 years. So we're definitely, we've got a good formula, and I'm very proud of it.
Cool, man. Well, cool. Well, anytime I hear about gold mines or, different kinds of mines, I always, think of different movies, but I also think of great, Ponzi schemes and, all kinds of other things. And so I think a lot of people, because it's such an unknown, I think, to people, right? And obviously it's a legitimate, real business. And obviously, there's, I think Warren Buffett bought a $500 million, gold mine this last year. Maybe it was 500, more than 500 million, but I think it was $500 million gold mine, right? So, tell people, I think people want to know, they're exploring wealth, right? Everybody's on this journey, right? We're in hyperinflation. People want stability. They're looking at, how do I do this? How do I win with, the meta economy, the space economy, the crypto economy, the real estate economy, the stock market economy, right? How do I win in these economies? And then there's, the digital winning, and then there's core hard assets winning, right? Commodities, right? One of the things we did is we dove deeper into farms about two and a half years ago and focused a little bit, I think we saw supply chain and other kinds of issues coming, and when we dove into that. So talk to people a little bit, what should they be looking for? What helps them decipher between the myth and the realness?
Well, I can only lead by example. So let's start with that. And when I look at my portfolio, I'm very big into call it an alternative investment if you want, but I'm more into I like commodities in terms of metals and mining. And when I say that, I specifically look at buying quality, publicly traded mining stocks that are exposed to whatever metal that I'm trying to get exposure to. I really like gold, silver, but I also like zinc, copper. I'll even go as far as oil and gas not being a metal. But I think I don't want to get political.
What's the big one that's in the batteries, like all the electric batteries?
That's lithium. Lithium is a big component. We actually have a lithium company, but I think I don't want to get political with you guys, but it comes down to every conversation on these types of things or at the dinner table. But this is what I think is going on and why there's an opportunity in the space that I've just mentioned. And you have a Fed that, in my mind, does not work for the American people. They work for whatever party's in the White House, and they're completely wrong on all their decisions in my mind. I mean, you had the Chairman Powell in November basically saying that inflation was a transitory phenomenon. It'll pass. Don't worry. And then right before Christmas, he says, "Oh crap, inflation's now a problem." Now you see it in every meeting they're doing. Now you see this interest rate phenomenon going on started with a quarter base points raises. Now we're going up to 50 basis points, and looks like we're going to get 7 or 8 of them for the rest of the year, whatever the number is. But I just don't see how a governing body with our most powerful economy in the entire world, you have the leader behind it, so wrong in his projections or his statements at a certain time that was so critical to the way our economy was going to be heading. And it's simple mathematics, it's simple economics. When you print as much money as been printed in the system over the last 2.5, 3 years, you can't deny that there is going to be a whirlwind of inflation. And I firmly believe that the number that we're currently seeing reported is nowhere close to the actual real number. And we haven't even factored in.
Well, when you look at something as simple as gas is up, 30+% in the last 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. And people can say, the economy is only inflating by 7%, but you look at simple things, like for us, we sold hay at $160 a ton, and now we sell it at, $340 a ton. You look at, different things that are up 50%, up 100%, up 30%. Tell me what's up 7%. I don't know anything that's up 7 or 8% from 2021. I mean, do you is there a single product that only raised by 7 or 8%? And that's, when you look at that, that's pretty fascinating.
Everything's affected. You're right. I mean, I don't know a good today that's cheaper than it was 2 years ago. I really don't. But I mean, you're looking at, oil and gas, that's a little bit different because now they're pawning that off on the whole Ukraine-Russia crisis situation, though. So really they're.
Oh, it hit before that.
Yeah,
timing wise.
Exactly. So, I think we're in this second inning of this problem, if you want to call it that, this situation that has been created. We haven't seen wage raising and wage prices. The only way you're going to get people back to work. I mean, when was the last time you tried to get an Uber and you couldn't get one, or you were at a restaurant and they were crappy service because no one was working? Well, the only way you're going to get those people back to work is to pay them more. And this isn't something that after you pay them in 6 months from now, say, well, inflation's now coming down, which it won't, by the way, but that's what they're saying. What are you going to pay them less? Are you suddenly going to say, okay, inflation's under control, we're going to start paying you less? So that's one aspect. And then you have the rents. Rents are going up. And it's not something that in a year's time, you suddenly say, okay, we'll start paying us less now because everything's in check. No, it's the new norm here is that these things are going up. And we haven't seen the wage or rent increases in the inflation numbers that I can see.
Well, I mean, so like I don't know how many employees or how many people do you have with you, John?
We're small. I mean, we're call it 5 management, and then of course you got your drillers in the field, but they're consultants.
So we're about 150, internal, and probably another 100 external. And when I say external, because of all the real estate we do, we have rehabbers, contractors, everything from plumbers to electricians to drywallers to laborers to guys doing demolitions and different kinds of things, and then internally operationally. So I'm on a monthly basis, I'm doing an inflation check, right, with pay and staff and different things, and so we're increasing pay at unprecedented rates, within our company. And, it hasn't affected us in the sense that I think it might be affecting a lot of business, because we're in such a rapid growth phase as a company that our labor cost is becoming less and less a part of as a percentage of our total cost of business operations. And so we're able to afford but I want to pay my people well, and I don't think there's a business owner out there that doesn't. Well, maybe there's a couple jerk offs in the world, but I think your primary business owner wants to pay his people really well. It's just, are they capable? And is the business set up for them to be capable? And the problem, you look at, let's say a restaurant is, they are going to go pay more for chicken and lettuce, right? And the commodity, and then they're going to charge more to the consumer. But is there a margin gap that's being created for the labor, right? Part of that margin gap. And you're right, unless we pay people more, then obviously the people that have to work hardest in this country that we need to respect the most, right? I always say that about our military, right? The reason you and I have freedom is because of our military.
Absolutely.
Is they have to be able to live and creating a good lifestyle. The whole thing is like, people say, well, we need a working class, we need a working poor, right? In order to, make this country run. And my answer is yes, but what's wrong with the working class of America being a middle class? What's wrong with the working class of America being able to afford a nice place to live, nice furniture, nice, utilities, nice, basics of life? And if that's, with the income of a person, that does a normal everyday job, which is great, why can't they make good money? And that's always been kind of my philosophy. Years and years ago, we took our minimum wage as a company up to $15 an hour when the average minimum wage in America was about $7. And I don't know that we have an average minimum wage in our company at this point. I'd have to, check in with HR, but I know it's, maybe even 2x of what the national average is for brand new entry level, people with no experience, joining our company. That doesn't happen too often anymore, just because of the specialization of what we do. But so for you, I like that philosophy of paying people more, but how do we do that?
Well, it's the price of goods. I mean, everything is just going to increase all at the same time, all relative to what you're paying people. I mean, I have a saying: you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. All right. So I have I as well. I mean, the minimum wage should be higher. But at the same time, so businesses are being strangled by raising costs. So, I mean, everything. So the consumer is the one at the end of the game that has to pay more money.
That's where we get screwed, in the sense that like you came on, like a lot of your initiatives, you come on right or right side, right? But paying people a lot more minimum wage is very left side, right? And so to me, that tells me you're like me, where you probably have right views, you have left views, you have middle views. You're probably, believe in people's rights, and it's fascinating, because to me, I always, I can't control who's in power. I just got to know what the rules of the game are to win. And that's generally how I look at, politics. Is they're going to make rules, and I got to go win for my investors. I got to go win for my employees. I got to go win for my family. Right. And these are things I have to do to be successful, because if I can't win for my employees, they're not going to have jobs. And if they don't have jobs, I'm not going to have a company. And if we don't have a company, I can't help my investors. And so for me, there's going to be new rules every 4 years, because our rules changed a lot when the administration changed for how we raise money, how we deal with the SEC and things. Things shifted, and I have all the respect in the world for governing bodies that want to protect investors. It's very important. At the same time, the rules changed, and we had to change with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Listen, I mean, my views are. I mean, I'm from the thought or religion of kindness. Just be kind to everybody. But I think my issues rise, or my issues are challenged when I just want to see people working. Okay. And pay them for what they're worth. And if they're doing a good job, pay them well. But my problem comes down to the fact when people aren't working, they aren't contributing to society, they ain't doing anything, and they're getting these handouts. Okay. That's the free money and the printing press that's been going on. And that's where I have my problem. And
we had an investor in here yesterday that was wanting to build shelters or invest money into building shelters and different kinds of things. And it's, homeless is a very fascinating conversation in America, because you're right. Because when I lived in San Francisco, 20 years ago, they were giving checks to homeless people. And my thing is, if you give checks, just flake money, right, to homeless people, then you're going to bring more homeless people to your city, and the homeless population is going to grow. And so for me,
look what happened. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's exploded, right? California is disgusting with homeless. And I don't mean that homeless people are disgusting. Homeless people are just people, right? But the problem and the issue of people living on the streets, and I walk through LA and I step over people that are out of their minds on drugs, just walking down business districts, and people shooting up drugs in the middle of the city of LA. And I just recently moved from California to Florida a few months ago, and I did it because I didn't feel safe in a main city financial district. You got a Bank of America headquarters there, and forgive me, I'm not saying which banks they are, just Bank of America is an example. Chase headquarters there, and a major law firm headquarters there with their 100-foot story buildings, and you can't walk from one of those buildings to the next one without feeling like there's a danger. And that's pretty mind blowing to me. And if you just give people handouts, I believe there's a difference between handouts for the homeless that are just handouts, and then they're setting up proper mental health for people with mental health issues. And I, obviously they haven't been able to figure out the problem, but
yeah, I mean, listen, I'm more in tune with people that have every ability to go to work, every ability to have a decent job. They choose not to because they have more of a benefit by what they're getting to actually going out and actually working. And that's my problem. And that has been created over the last 2-3 years from, all the stimulus that's been handed out. And by the way, they're not taking the foot off the gas on that stimulus. It's still there. So no wonder we're in this position, no wonder we're in this situation, and no wonder now we have to.
But what do you think about universal basic income, right? I've heard that conversation, that topic kicked around, right? That there's, a basic, income that, people, could be making. What's your thought on that?
It's a little bit out in left field for me. I'm old school. Listen, I grew up in Canada, so Canada back when I was a child to what it is now. I now live in the United States, but Canada's become a socialist country. Absolute socialism at its finest. You have your free med, you're covered on socialized medicine. It's a disaster. It doesn't work. So I think if you're looking at kind of a blanketed income across the board, listen, anytime you try to take control of people's lives, especially in the healthcare field, and that's a prime example, it doesn't work. America is the greatest economy.
What about, and I'm just throwing stuff out, right? I don't have a dog in this fight. What about a universal basic income, but that has a progressive stair-stepped work to play system, where maybe, let's say if every American, right, let's just say made $100,000 a year. And granted, I have plenty of employees that make less than 100,000 a year, and plenty of employees that make more than 100,000 a year, right? But let's just say every American, just as a thought experiment, made 100,000 a year. But to make that 100,000 a year, you have to be gainfully employed, right? Working, for a company or organization or business, in America. And, you put some other parameters on it, some other reasonable parameters on it, and what if we changed, and it's just a thought experiment. What if you changed the dynamic and you said, not only do we create a universal basic income, but 10% of that income has, instead of 10% going to taxes, right? Because I think, government having more money doesn't do us any good as Americans. It's just, my general belief is the government has plenty of money, and it's the effective use of the money will empower the government to do great things, right? And great things are done by our government, to be crystal clear, in my opinion. But at the same time, there's a lot of waste. And so let's say 10% of that money has to go to charitable organizations. And you start changing, and it's just, it's random thought. I've never even really had a deep thought into this. I don't know. What do you think if there was like a progressive work to play kind of system?
I hear what you said, but it's totally against what America's all about and what it's been built on. And, you reward people that have taken risks. You reward people that have been creative. It's like, for instance, this billionaire tax is coming on. Should we tax these billionaires, more than what everyone else is making? Well, yeah, they got so much money. I don't have a problem with it. But if you start making this for every American, everyone's going to be set on it. It's totally, it's not what America is built on. And you made something else.
So you tell me as an immigrant, right, into the U.S., right? You tell me what are your beliefs that America is built on?
Well, my wife is American. So, I'm not, I would say, an immigrant, like a guy coming up through the southern border. That's the first off. I came through legally, and that's what I think every person coming to this country should be doing, coming through legally. Listen, I'm a capitalist. Okay. I like people that build businesses, employ people, take the risk in employing people. And I believe in people that make those risks and take those risks with the business that's doing sweat and tears and basically creating something. I think they should be given tax breaks. I think they should be given incentives for doing so. However, the push has been to basically have these people take the risks, increase the benefits for their employees, which is a cost to that business, increase taxes to that business. So they're strangling what America is built on, and that's by people being creative and being capitalistic. You made a comment earlier. You said our government has a lot of money, and our government doesn't have a lot of money. They're completely broke. They just decide to print more money.
Well,
that's
in the
problem.
sense that where I disagree with you, right, is our government is massively in debt, right? And they have endless debt, but the government is receiving trillions of dollars, right? Hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars, right, from the American taxpayer, every single year. Now, what they choose to do, the effective risk, right, or the effective use of that money is different, right? I will tell you that, Elon Musk became the richest man in the world for a company that spent a long time, right, not turning a profit. But he had a lot of money, and he had a lot of money he put to work, a lot of money he put to play, a lot of money, that he made something, he's going to be, I think when 500 years from now, people look back at our world, they're going to look at him as one of the impacts, an Albert Einstein type of impact, on our world. And so I look at those kind of things. And so I think the fascinating thought experience is I don't think anything you just said takes away from anything from the previous thought experiment, in the sense that I still think if you had...
We interrupt this broadcast to remind you to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the RAD Podcast.
People have to work, right? Universal income. It doesn't take away from the capitalists still making more money, or the capitalists who take risks winning bigger. Like for me, don't get me wrong for a second, right? I'm an absolute capitalist in the sense that I have, built an empire from scratch, not generationally gifted to me, not, handed down, not lucky, and those kind of things. And so, I go, something's counterintuitive to what some people think, in the sense they're like, pay your employees the least amount you have to pay them, to keep them working and keep them happy. Or, I take care of, our employees to a level, to an extreme level. And, I pay for, 75% of their healthcare and other things that I do for our people. And people are always asking me, well, why do we pay more people? Or why are we giving bonuses? And why are we giving raises? Why are we giving people a percentage of the pie, right? And granted, I still have the largest percentage of that pie with my partner, my business partner, right? But at the same time, I believe in the inclusive, right, stakeholdership of my people, right? And if my people have stakeholdership in the mission and the purpose and the vision, it makes a big difference. And granted, I'm not saying I'm trying to institute and practice this theory. It's just a theory that if people had to work in order to receive that UBI, I wonder how many people in America, if they could make 100K a year, and they knew they could make 100K a year, and they had to work in order to do it. It's very different to think that I'm going to go to Chipotle and I'm going to work the front line, right, for $15 an hour, when people are getting these things, right? But if people knew they had to go to Chipotle and we were to set up, but it would change the financial system in a way that is probably impossible to understand or read. But the financial system's falling apart. And so brainstorming, do you think we have to go to crypto at some point in time so that we have a backed financial monetary?
So back to that point, I just want to say, so you choose to pay your employees well. That's why you have a successful business. Your employees love you. they'll work, they'll do whatever. Like that's the kind of thing that you've created. The minute you start blanketing a common wage and people start to get equal, and we make sure people make a certain amount of money, you turn an employee from an asset into a liability.
An entitled employee is a horrible thing.
Absolutely.
It really is. And we've seen it, when there's a false expectation of, versus right versus right to work, which are two different things. I have the right to just be here versus I have a right to work here, are two kind of different, very different things.
Or you've earned it. Exactly. But back to your crypto, back to your crypto. So I'm a firm believer that, the technology behind crypto, the blockchain technology, is fascinating. I am not a avid or I dabble, but I do not really believe in the cryptocurrency phenomenon. I've definitely owned some. I've traded it, all for a financial benefit. I really, my basis of my thought and my reasoning and what I would like to see happen is more of a gold back type currency. I do believe the U.S. government will adopt an electronic currency of their own, but I don't think it'll be Bitcoin. I think they'll create their own. I think that's really, they're never going to go and endorse and just model and just take over Bitcoin per se. And just because there's too many unknowns, we don't know where it came from. We don't know who owns this stuff. I could never see that happening personally.
But for the Bitcoin I own, I wouldn't be against it.
No, I mean, hey, listen, I think Bitcoin is going to do well over the, I'm totally for it. I think the people that came up with the idea and the people that have bought into it and done well with it, awesome. Good for you guys. I mean, I couldn't be happier. My investment background is more old school. I've made my money on more tangible assets. I love, gold, silver. I like to store wealth. I like, that's where I'd like to see a currency which is basically backed on history and backed on things that we can actually see what has transpired over generations and times of good and bad, and just seeing how you can actually go and see how things have reacted in times of war times or times of depressions. That's kind of how I'd like to see a currency based on.
I look at myself, sometimes I look at myself and I'm like, am I a dinosaur, right? Primary wealth built in real estate, primary wealth carried in real estate, right? And so I look at that and I say, well, as much new age stuff that happens, metaverse, crypto, I think there's a whole new space economy that's coming, down the road. As much new stuff that's coming, old school still applies. And, old school, foundational stuff still applies, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that we have to be ignorant or blind, to what's here. Right. And so it's fascinating, the unique balance. Like we have a whole research team on metaverse and crypto, working in the company, and it's fascinating what they come up with, and then applying old school concepts to, those same principles to some of that foundation. It's interesting. I think there's people obviously in the world that feel about, crypto and other things the same way you feel about commodities and I feel about, real estate. But my thought process is, for me, it's still a game. It's a mythological game to be played to win, but so is Vegas, when you go to Vegas. And so I kind of see that, it's part of that in that realm, but maybe that's just for me from an understanding standpoint. I don't know. What do you think?
Listen, I mean, there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. There's people, the only thing I'll say is it is a game like Vegas, but at least in Vegas, you get a free drink with what you're doing. I think, listen, I never talk against crypto. I think the whole market of crypto, we've seen one of the biggest sectors in terms of growth, I think, ever in human history, how we saw the market depth and market cap of cryptocurrency, what it's done over the last 5 years. It's unprecedented. It's unbelievable. Because of people's wants and demands, and because people have made this mainstream, it has forced everyone and companies and the marketplace to accept what people have been wanting and demanding. If people weren't accepting cryptocurrency, we wouldn't see people accepting it as payment. We wouldn't see companies like PayPal and these type companies accepting it and making it mainstream, or more to that matter, banks and major brokerage firms started to accept it to the point that they are. It's still in its infancy. It's only going to become more and more and more and more. It's unbelievable. So, I'm happy to see that because of the demands and wants from the public and how this has gone from essentially the original kind of shady, dirty type investment with crypto. Oh, it's all bad money. It's people laundering, it's drug lords, whatever it might be, to where it is now. It just shows you that, the big guys up there are listening to what the public is demanding. Sure, they're going to make a crap pot of money on it in every transaction, and the government can tax it and do whatever, but I applaud it. And again, back to the gold side, if people are more on in terms of more of these, gold type bugs like I am, there's good for you too. But, I think there's definitely a mix of everyone. Listen, if you have a gold backed economy and you put some sort of blockchain technology inside of it, that looks pretty interesting, doesn't it? That could be quite dangerous. So we don't know what's going to happen, but as far as I'm concerned, listen, something has to be done, because this just old-fashioned US dollar system, in my mind, is kind of failing us.
So it's like the CEO, right, of an investment firm. How do you look at gold as a backed standard for the dollar, right? Do you think there's a reality, there's a movement, there's support for it, like 1 to 5% or 10% support, and the American public or through, political powers doesn't really mean anything unless the most powerful voices say, I want to do this, right? In the next, 5 years, right? Unless, DeSantis and Trump, as, powerful Republican voices, or, the Biden Clinton, regime. I can't even, the other gal, vice president, she's,
yeah, we forgot her name long ago.
I just don't think she's going to have a chance, with a voice, with the things that I've seen, and I don't, it just is how the press is perceiving people. It's unless one of them comes and says, "Hey, let's make the American dollar backed by gold again." Do you really think it has a chance?
Okay, well, I don't run an investment firm. I used to be in, heavy advising people with money, okay. and now I run a mining company and several mining companies, but that we've been very successful and lucky on. But I don't really know how they would transition it. It's not something you go to the American public and take a vote on. I mean, this is something that we've never really seen historically. I mean, I don't think it could just be, I guess the U.S. system could adopt a backing, but I think you'd have to probably go through the World Bank as well, the IMF, like whatever it might be, because it's not just, an American, everyone takes US dollars across the globe, right? I mean, this is the world's strongest currency.
It's the only currency where there's enough space to have $1 billion transactions.
It's stable, right? It's a stable currency. So how do you actually transition it and back it? Really, the only reason why you'd have to do so is that if our US dollar started collapsing.
Yeah.
And my personal view is the US dollar right now, actually, we've seen a pretty nice run here, very strong dollar this week, but that's probably from a selling off stock markets. But
if the US dollar crashes, the world crashes.
Well, it won't. People value and devalue currencies for a number of reasons, but I don't think crash would be the word. But I do think the US dollar is too high. I think they will. I'm betting on a much lower US dollar. Hence, the move in commodities and prices that are quoted in US dollars. If the lower dollar comes into play, the price of the commodity is going to be higher. So that's one of the reasons for this my push into metals and mining and other commodities. I think this is, like I said, we're in second inning of this mess that we have created ourselves since pre-COVID or right around COVID, with all this printing press, everything. We still have a long way for this thing to unfold. I really think that again, inflation we're not even near it. We're going to see it continue. And I don't even think the amount of, and by the way, so when the Fed raises interest rates all this time, remember, they're servicing a debt and they're just paying higher rates. So it's kind of counterintuitive in my mind to just keep printing money and having to service a debt with higher rates. So I'm going to go back to my statement. We have a blind Fed leading us. I don't think they're in tune with what we're doing. But time will tell, time will play out. And unfortunately, we're stuck in the mix of it. But back to the point, I really see the US dollar going much, much, much lower.
So as a normal everyday person that's trying to build wealth, right? What does this mean to them? Like these are, very high level conversations, when it comes to, a Fed, non-Fed, gold, crypto, back forth, what's going to happen politically, all of these different things. Like how does the average person, like, how do they approach this journey? Even, there's people that are saying, well, what do I do with my career? Right. If I was making good money, 12 months ago, and now I'm making 20% less, right? Against, where the dollar's gone. And that's where I think we're at. I think we're at a 20% change, across the board, even though they say it's, far less than that. What do they do? Or what is a person who's been in the stock market and they're riding the yo-yo, that they've been riding? What does a normal person do? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm not allowed to give advice, but I'll give
Of
you,
course.
I'll lead by example and kind of give you that. So I mean, take all this with just, this is my view. I think really the most direct point of influence, the thing that affects people most on the day-to-day, average American across, working hard, the most important thing to look at is interest rates. Okay, interest rates is I'm going to call it a temperature gauge of what the economy is doing. And we've seen what happens when you have times of interest rates spiking, which is what we're currently starting to see now. We're going to see a rise in interest rates. That's the thing, which is the silent thing that sneaks up on you. You just don't see it. And every American's exposed to it, either through, your debt load, if you're servicing, if you're, obviously, if you try to lock in at a low rate, it affects your real estate purchases. And if you're servicing something and you're not locked in at a rate for the next 30 years or so, and suddenly you're exposed to a 10%, mortgage or whatever thing, whatever line of credit you might be having, that's gonna strangle you. And I think if you're trying to time the market, if you're trying to time, gold prices, if you're trying to time crypto prices, you're nothing more than a junkie in Vegas, because it's a fool's game. You never will. My view is that, in times of uncertainty like we're approaching, you just basically stay course and you don't alter. And if you've got good financial advice and you got a portfolio that's a basket of index type instruments, like things that are component on the Dow or the NASDAQ, whatever it might be, the long term of those picks of stocks in the indexes rides out. You will, in the long term, you'll benefit instead of trying to time these things with swings by selling something and trying to buy cheaper. You can't do that, because it's
people
just,
are so fickle, right? And
totally.
Like, we talk with investors all of the time, and they get hit and then they pull out, and then they're and then they want to try and make up what they lost, and so then they start putting back in, and we see it every day.
Yeah,
we're not a stock company and those kind of things, but we see it with our people investing, into the REIT and within the real estate world we're in every day. And I see people constantly, it's like you said, like a junkie, and they get caught into the addiction, and they also have a very difficult time just surrendering to the loss, and then they fight to come back, and they're fighting a game they're not pros at. And then therein lies becomes the challenges. Can the stock market be beat? Yeah. Can crypto be beat, with trading it and those kind of things? Yes, it can. But if you're not a pro, are you going to beat it? Unlikely. It's like, I can go pay $10,000 and go play in the World Series of Poker, but if I'm not a pro, if I'm not doing it every single day, it's a crapshoot. It's a very small % chance that I can go beat the pros. And that's what you're facing.
Yeah, you nailed on the head there. And the other thing that is different now to what it was, say, 5 years ago, is we have all these outlets for people to basically get exposed to the stock market or get exposed to investments which weren't readily available 5-10 years ago. So you have these Robinhoods or online brokerage firms. You have buying crypto through, Coinbase or whatever the hell you go and buy it on. It's created these virtual casinos, basically, for people to go and play at and take their hard-earned dollars and try to time the market. And it saddens me. It's not the way to play this game. if you have dollars set aside and you want to build wealth, well, you have to put it into, index type things and blue chips. And, it's the old Warren Buffett thing. You just buy it and you just put it away and you forget about it. Don't try to make timing on it. You don't know better than the market does. And by the way, you could have the best fund manager in the world that makes 80% one year and he's the fund manager of the year. Doesn't guarantee you the next year he's going to do the same thing. In actual fact, the numbers show that if whoever is consistently, if you have a really good year on the fund man, this is on Wall Street, the top fund manager one year is going to be probably bottom half the next year. It's just the way it works. So it's a fool's game. And again, I urge people to just think before they act, and just don't do it out of a mentality thinking you're going to get rich quick, because you won't.
Yeah. I mean, I talk with our investors all of the time, and we've had a really, great run through COVID and different things. And so we're ninth quarter in a row, with a stock increase, and that's pretty cool. Being a non-traded helps with that, with what we do in a lot of ways. But I look at our average investors, and I know that the first, time, and we take a loss, right, in the next, 2 or 3 years, let's say we have a 4% loss for a quarter, I know we'll have investors pull. And I always, I find it fascinating because it's the worst time for them to pull. Because like you said, we've had, we do have a rubber band effect, oftentimes, where the rubber band gets pulled and then it snaps, where we put a lot of outlay, and then that quarter is going to be, tighter. And then the following quarter, we're going to reap the rewards, right, from the capital investment we put out. But it's fascinating because you see it every single
We interrupt this broadcast to remind you to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the RAD Podcast.
And I see, the investors, who ride out the storm, win big and win in, incredible ways. But I think you have to be invested, though, into something that's real and tangible, and because there are companies that disappear, right? And so riding out the storm to the end of the time scares people when they looked at losing, 50, 60% of their portfolio in 2008 and 70%, or you look at like, a Madoff thing, that he pulled and destroyed, people's retirements and wealth. But as you get through this journey, it's just fascinating as you see the investor mindset. And I think understanding the psychology of what people are going through every day, makes a big difference. For you, as you're building your company and building your business, like what are your hacks, right, for wealth? What are your hacks for stuff, that you're accomplishing?
Like, what are my goals, or what are my
well, hacks. What are your tips? What are your
hacks?
What are your things that you feel like, listen, hey, here's a reason why I'm continuing to succeed? Obviously, you're in a good ecosystem, right?
And
the world you live in.
I mean, listen, I think the most important thing is if you're going to get investing in something, invest in something that actually you are familiar with. I mean, one of the main reasons I haven't been a big crypto investor is because I really don't understand the crypto space. I'm a finance guy. I've tried I've gone to crypto courses. I've tried to figure this stuff out. I still don't get it. So stick to something that stick to something that actually you have a passion in. If you're, if there's companies out there called DraftKings, they're gambling. Well, if you don't like gambling, why would you invest in DraftKings? If it's like, just what I do is I keep it simple. Okay. I have a bunch of stuff in the blue chip market. I invest in a lot of indexes, but where I actually put most of my money is in companies that I have started and created, because I'm very comfortable with what I create. I'm very comfortable with the people I work with. I know it's well funded. I know it's going to be an honest type venture, because there's no one in there that is going to be a weasel like you're seeing in all these other kind of venture markets out there. Because listen, we've kind of weeded out things over the last 25 years of doing this. But
what's your top sign? What's your number one thing if you see? What I'll tell you mine. But what's your number one thing if you said that company's a weasel, or that person's a weasel? What's your number one trait that jumps out to you?
Well, in my game, it's probably a little different, because if you look at the mining game in Canada, the junior mining game, it's the shadiest business in the bloody world. I mean, most of the guys that have created this industry, I mean, mining is a big blue chip industry in terms, but it starts from the the grassroots of the dark streets of Vancouver. I mean, that's really the breeding ground for all these junior mining companies. And I mean, there's an odd saying that how do you know, a promoter is lying to you, and it's because when he's moving his mouth. I mean, it's, never trust a man talking next to a gold mine. I mean, it's a shady business. And really, I think with us and what we do is, we put our money where our mouth is. We seed every investment that we do. We put all our cash in. We bring in institutional involvement. We have big institutions, some of the biggest, smartest guys in the business that are, that invest in Barrick and Agnico. I mean, they're investors in our deals. So it's just it's a track record. And for us, that's kind of our I don't invest in other people's deals if it's a speculative investment. I just do it. I do them myself because I trust it. I know how to do it. So kind of my hack might be a little bit different than yours, but it's just, you have to do your homework before you go in. You got to make sure people have a track record. You got to make sure there's management. You got to make sure they have money. And really that's kind of our smell test right there.
Yeah, I always go, back to Richest Men in Babylon's, one of my Bibles, for wealth. And it's one of the first traits is, invest in people with a proven history and track record of success, and it's fascinating. Years and years ago when I was a consultant, we got fired, and the company got a new CEO, and like 24 hours, 48 hours later, he fired our company. And that proceeded with us having, to let go of 22 people because, that was the revenue stream and the, product business that we worked on. And I went and did research on the CEO, and, I just did a quick little deep dive, and I couldn't find a single company he had ever run that was still a company. And like, to me, that's a very bad sign. If a company hires a new CEO and all the companies that they hired are no longer in business, it's a pretty bad sign.
Yeah, that's a warning bell. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I mean, in today's info world, every company is going to have some kind of complaint, or every company is going to have somebody who, doesn't love them, but, what's their scale? Like for us, we're 500,000 plus, tribe members and thousands of investors and, thousands of customers. And, you can't hardly even find a peep of a negative comment about us, online. And that's one of the hardest things in the world for us to create, and build is, an unstoppable reputation.
Mm-hmm.
As I look at someone though, who says, I'm the end all be all, I'm the everything, right? I'm the answer to I am the knowing, and I'm unfathomable, and I'm unshakable, and I can't, make mistakes. And to me that, false idolship, that you see people try and create out there in the world, I think that's really dangerous. Because, as men, we are, we have weaknesses, we have mistakes, we have challenges. Now, are we playing the game at a place where we can overcome those and beat those and be better than those? Yeah. But if you think that, you're perfect, or you're speaking to the world that you're perfect, I always say that's a sign that something's wrong there. Like there's something with that onion that has to be peeled back. And I'm always kind of fascinated when I look at the companies that don't have real challenges or aren't, transparent enough to show real challenges, because every company in the world, if you didn't say you didn't have any challenges in the last 2 years, then you weren't actually in business. And we won big time during COVID, but at the same time, there were real challenges. We just had to, a month ago, we just had to shut down our offices in California again, for some people that tested, positive, and,
mm-hmm.
We want to make sure everybody's safe and protected. But, that's a real challenge when you have, 40 people that suddenly have to go home and work and still produce and be productive and work as a team. So
mm-hmm.
those are some of my things. Like, you have to watch out for that version of perfection and that version of, unfallibility, I guess
mm-hmm.
is the way to put it. I don't know. Is that something you've seen over the years? Like when you say the promoters are talking?
Yeah. I mean, everything, listen, I mean, everyone has challenges. There's nothing perfect. I mean, you look and see that, back to that Elon Musk story. Elon Musk used to sleep on his factory floor. He was so stressed he couldn't eat. He almost killed him. Like, it was his story of how he built Tesla is something actually everyone should, if you haven't read about it, just read about it. And everyone thinks his life's all fine and glory, but guys, the amount of stress that guy goes through on a daily basis. I mean, personally, I don't think it's worth it. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the richest man in the world if I couldn't have the ability to enjoy it. And essentially he says that, I mean, it's the higher up the tree you go, the windier it gets. And people have to realize that, because you have responsibility, you have more at risk. You're not just suddenly working for someone and just collecting a paycheck. You are actually out there creating it. You're the one doing it. I look at my company, Starr Mining, one of the big discoveries that we've made here in the last 2 years. And we're a better company today than we ever have been. And my share price is trading, say, at $1.20 Canadian or $1 US. Well, I was high as $4, but it's just the market sentiment. It's just the way that things work in the world. And I can't say, I'm worse today than I was 2 years ago. No, things have never been better, but it's just, hey, listen, it's a cycle. It's never a straight line. That's kind of the way I look at it.
I agree. I do, maybe that comment you said, like, maybe it's not worth it, right? To become, the richest man in the world, to be close to suicide, or be close to, I'm not sure that he's ever said that, but I mean, just close to that torturous life, I mean, I live there's an amount of stress and torturous life that I know that I lead. There's no question that there's a stress and a burden that you carry. But I also, I see people all the time talking about how hard they have to work to be successful, all the time. And I see it like on, Instagram, Facebook, but I see it, different people quoting the Mamba Kobe mentality, right? If you're an old Lakers fan. For me, I know that I work hard, but I don't build my life to work hard. And maybe that's a little bit just different mentality of my end, is I don't build my life to be busy. I mean, I build my life to be effective and productive. And I build my life to be a present, good father, right? With my 2 sons and a good spouse. But I don't think that like me laboring harder is going to make us more successful, as an organization and a company, and me making my mind stronger, me making better decisions, me collecting better data and better information, me creating better, mentorship training, with our teams and our people, and being an inspiration behind those things. Yeah, I think those things make us more successful. But that's not necessarily harder, it's smarter, right? I'm not against, hard work, because there are definitely weeks that I put in, a 50 or 60 or even 70-hour week, but I build my life to work 30 hours a week, because when I do that, I feel like I'm building my life to a place to do the things that inspire me, to be great. I don't know. How do you look at that conversation?
I bet you work differently when you're younger to the way you work now. I mean, everyone, it's just you change and you evolve, and your responsibilities get different. Not even from work, but also becoming a father. I mean, it's just my purpose of my existence now completely shifted when I became
changes the whole game, doesn't it?
It changes everything. And we're blessed. I mean, it's the best thing you could possibly do, because you now have a purpose. You have a reason to do what you do. And like, I look and just say, like, look in the last 3 years. Okay. I used to travel religiously because I have to in my world, going to see this mine or that mine or this financing group, and whatever city it might be, whatever country it might be. I now do not travel because you don't have to. This Zoom phenomenon, these types of communication that you can do now, it's reinvented the world, and I don't have to leave my family. Sure, there's sometimes you have to go and you have to look at someone in the eyes and do that, but realistically, if I'm was traveling 2 weeks out of every month, I am maybe once every 4 months going somewhere to do some sort of business that I do daily now on my computer screen, anytime, anywhere in the world, and nobody can tell any different. I mean, and the output has been greater today than it was when I was doing that traveling. My health is better. My family life is better. I'm seeing my kids, like everything is a plus. And that's just the way life has progressed, and it's changed. And I think actually that's going to be, because COVID, by the way, is, on the outs, I guess, but it's not going to go back to the way it was. I see it, staying on this path. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to share with them as like an outro or a CTA?
I think just as an idea. I mean, I put my money where my mouth is, and a company, for instance, Starr Mining is the one that we're very proud of. It's been a big discovery. It trades publicly.
We'll drop links.
Drop links to all that. And
we'll drop links and put it in the description and everything too.
That sounds great, bud. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the RAD Podcast, an exploration of wealth. For more information, please visit our website, www.raddiversified.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave us a review and let us know how we're doing.